Welcome back to, what is this, the fourth video? I don't know. Today we're going to be looking at baking textures, specifically baking ambient occlusion maps, but you can actually bake a lot more than that, and we will touch briefly on all of it and primarily on the ambient occlusion. So what we're going to do here, I'm actually going to go ahead and delete off the secondary material. We're going to be doing a single texture on this for this instance. So I'm going to go ahead and just re-unwrap this and then come over here. I do want to be at a 32 pixel resolution. We're going to apply. See that this is clearly far more than what this image resolution can hold. This image is a 32 by 32 pixel texture. So I'm just going to go ahead and create a new texture. And we're going to create this at, let's go with a 64 by 64. And let's go with a color grid. That won't actually matter too much, but it'll help us see things a little easier here. So we're going to, now that we added a new texture, we're going to have to reapply this. Oh wait, I need to change this first to a 64 pixel resolution image. I think we'll be okay here. So let's go ahead and just move these quickly so that they all fit. I'm going to constrain to image bounds. Round to pixel is already turned on. And we can see here when we select something, we can tell what part of the mesh it is, which is why I went with the color grid here instead of just a single color, because if it was a single color, we wouldn't know what we're moving. This one we can see we're moving the leg that's kind of in the back corner there. Usually you want to organize these into a fashion that makes sense so that you can easily tell what's what. I'm seeing an issue here. This image is not going to be big enough, unfortunately, unless, can I get creative? Sometimes you just really have to play around and pack stuff in. So if I put all the legs there, and if I rotate this top 90 degrees, the top will fit. These are going to be all of my little leg pieces. This one, you can't see it moving, but because there's only two larger portions and one smaller one, I know it's an upper piece because they don't have the, it's not a full cube. It's missing a face. I'm going to actually rotate this 180. Why won't it let me? What did I just do? I accidentally hit it. Alt H will unhide. H will hide if you ever accidentally do that. I have a feeling this is not going to be enough space. That's unfortunate. Sometimes that's just the way it goes, though. Will this fit there? It would just fit here. But you know what? I don't know how I did that. I don't think it's not going to be enough space. This is most unfortunate. All right, well, then we are just going to go ahead and create a new image and doubling one up to 128. And we can actually just scale the UVs down halfway to put them back to the correct resolution. I'm going to go ahead and grab all of these pieces. And now that I have the space, I'm going to actually leave 1 pixel distance between them. You don't actually need to do that, but should somebody enable filtering in Minetest to make the textures smooth, which in my opinion makes them look really ugly, but if somebody were to do that, this helps prevent the textures from bleeding together a little bit. Now, if you're actually worried about, I shouldn't say worried, but if you actually want to be considerate of people like that, you should also really leave them pulled in 1 pixel from the edge of the image, because otherwise Minetest will wrap. So it'll take, essentially it's applying a blur to the texture. So the pixels on this edge here will be blurred with the pixels from this edge. So to actually do this in a fashion that helps prevent that, you'd have to pull it in 1 pixel from the border. I usually put everything to the border, but you know what? We'll keep it pulled in 1 pixel just because. All right, so we have every portion of this mesh has its own representation on the texture, so everything can be textured independently of one another. We are going to need to change our render engine to cycles, and if you have a GPU that is supported, definitely turn on GPU compute. It will work with CPU, but obviously a GPU is designed for graphic stuff, and it'll work quite a bit faster if you do that. So we have this, and then we're going to come down to the Bake tab here. Let me actually go ahead and move the screencast keys. Here we go. Align. Let's align left. And put some offset. There we go. Okay. So what we are going to be baking here is not combined. It will be ambient occlusion. And you'll see what ambient occlusion is here in a second. We will do image textures. We are going to clear image. That just pretty much blanks the image before it bakes. Which if you don't do, you can get some weird results. Actually, no, I'll leave it turned off so you can see what weird results I'm talking about. Margin, we are going to leave at adjacent faces, and I'm going to turn the size down to... I'll turn it down to... No, you know what? Let me leave it at 16 so I can demonstrate what that looks like, and then we can proceed on from there. So we're going to go ahead and click Bake. Because this is very small, it's only going to take a fraction of a second. And you can see here that it has not cleared the image, so the image still exists behind it. But there's this weird kind of outline that's following it, which, you know, what's that all about? Also, it's all black, which we'll get to in a second. That is our adjacent faces size here. So what Blender is doing is it's determining the amount of light approximately that's hitting every face. And then it's mapping that from 100% light as white to 0% as black. And it is putting it onto our texture here. And then it's doing like a bleed coming out 16 pixels. When we're dealing with something that's this low resolution, 16 pixels obviously is way too much. I usually set it to 0. Now as far as why this is showing up black instead of, you know, actually shaded, very easy reason for that. We have our cube here to show us the size of a node. That's essentially blocking all light from hitting this stool. So what we can do is, I believe this is our bounding box cube. Yep. We will just turn that off from disable and renders, and we also want to come over to, I think this one. I don't know if this one actually has to be turned off, but we're going to turn it off. We could even make it not visible in the 3 viewport. Actually, it looks like these both do the same. What? Okay, well, the only one that really matters for this is disable and render. And now if we bake it, let me put this back up to like 2 so we can see what it would actually look like. Select the mesh we want to bake, click bake. Bada bing, bada boom. We now have our shading on here, but you'll notice we got some funky little details going on. Like, why is there this dark stripe on the edge of this? That should be not like that. What's going on? What's going on? This doesn't look right. Well, that's actually because if we come in here, it's hard to tell what's really happening. But as Blender, this is such a small image and it renders so quickly that I can't show it happening real time. It does one face and then the next and then the next and the next, and the bleed, the margin that it's putting out here, is overwriting previously shown portions. So to fix that, we just set the size to 0. I'm going to go ahead and clear image this time. This is going to make everything outside of where we have our UV mapping just be solid black. We'll bake once more. Hey, what do you know? No, I'm noticing something weird here, in that everything is offset by 1 pixel, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Oh, you know what? This has, okay. Why? Oh, you know what? Let's go over to the shading tab. That's why. So it should really be using untitled.001. Basically what happened there, Untitled 001 is the one that is 128 pixels by 128 pixels. Because I already had a texture set, and the texture was set as a lower resolution image, it's baking to whatever the texture is in the material. So either coming to the shading tab, whatever material is listed here, or if you're just looking here, whatever material is listed here is what it's using. So if we try this again, well, let's go back to UV editing so we can see the UV layout here. So now we have the right texture resolution. We'll bake, and what do you know, it's working. But I can still demonstrate this if we put that back up to 3. We should get some faces. I shouldn't say we should, but we likely, oh, actually doesn't look like we are. But you can see here how there's like this diagonal line showing up. Diagonal line, that's the margin it's putting in. And occasionally one face will overwrite its margin into a previously existing faces. At least I have experienced that. Maybe that's an issue that wasn't supposed to happen and has since been fixed, and you'll never actually see that happening. I don't know. But there's really no need for having any geometry or any texture existing outside of what we see exactly here. So if we just look at this real quick, I'm going to go ahead and pull the top of this bar stool up so we can see what's actually going on here. So we'll see on the underside, we have pitch black, close enough to pitch black, right where it is matching up with all of this portion, because no light can hit this because it's completely occluded by the legs and these cross supports. So essentially that is what ambient occlusion is doing. It's looking at your mesh, looking at all the faces of it and saying, if this was surrounded by just like a sphere of light, a soft sphere completely encompassing this, what portions would have shading on them and what portions would not have shading? So the top of the chair, obviously, nothing is above this to cast a shadow on it, so it should be full bright. The underside middle of the chair here should be darker because, well, it has a shadow because it's the underside, but then also these 4 pieces here are stopping light from hitting that, so that's going to be darker. And if we look at the bake here, we can see that, in fact, yes, this is darker, and then the bottom of the stool gets progressively lighter as we travel closer to the edge. And then the same thing with the legs, where the little cross braces are. That's where these black spots are showing here because no light is hitting those. And the same with the little cross braces. You know, this is the inside, 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 and inside. And then obviously these lighter ones are the outsides. Again, same thing. So what do we want to use this for? Well, let's get right into that. So we're going to go ahead and go back into edit mode here just so we can get our UVs. And we are going to export the UV layout as we have done before. Make sure you select SVG. I know this isn't visible right now. Tough luck, Buttercup, I guess. We're not doing anything special. We're just saving it as a SVG. And then we are going to export the image. Where is that located? Oh, we have to go under image. Duh. And we're going to, you can do save, you can do save as, you can do save as copy. I usually just use save as, and we're just gonna put it someplace easy to find and give it a name that makes sense. I usually like to append an AO for ambient occlusion on that. But now that we have those saved, let's hop over into our favorite image editor. You can use any image editor you would like. In this instance, I will be using GIMP because that's what I like. Let me get that set up here. All right, so I have the bake image here loaded up into GIMP. We will add in the UV layout that we exported. So we're just gonna right click over here in the paths tab, and then we would do import path. I already browsed to it, so I can just turn on the visibility here. So we can now see exactly where all of our UV layout stuff is in Blender, so we can see exactly how that correlates to this. What we're going to do now is create a new layer, We can leave that all as is. And we're going to change the mode to multiply. And this should be the same in any image editor you might be using, be it GIMP, be it Krita. I don't really know what other options you have. But yeah, essentially that's what you would be using. I mean, you can play around with these, and you could do something like soft light, or I guess hard light doesn't work. Does overlay work? Not really. Yeah, I mean, I would just stick with multiply. It's never failed for me. And what this is going to do for us is it pretty much gives us free shading. So I'm going to use the pattern fill, which we so courteously have provided to us. Hey, it's filled with a pattern that looks like pine wood. That's a terrible pine wood texture, actually. Like, what in the world? All right, so I just have some random texture. Yeah, it kind of looks like this. It's quite large, so let's actually go ahead and scale it down a little bit. Hey, now you can actually see what the full texture looks like. So this is a wood texture. This is from the Pixar 128 library. It is a Creative Commons attribution library of a variety of different textures, I guess created by Pixar and released under Creative Commons. I don't know, man. I've had this for a long time. I've actually used it in quite a lot of my projects. You could scale this to any size you want. It doesn't matter. Actually, let me leave it just a little bit bigger so we can see what makes this whole thing so unique. So we have all of our shading automatically applied. Very nice. So we can move around this texture. Say if we were like, I don't really care for where that's located. Let me move it here. Oh, I like that better. I mean, on this one, it doesn't really make any difference because it's kind of all the same, honestly. But I'll just find something I like. Sure, I like this. So we'll go with that. And now I'm going to go ahead and just erase out this portion here, because the top of the chair I still want to be a different material. So I'm going to go ahead and clear that out. Very nice, very nice. So now I'm just going to hop back in and find some other texture that I think would make a good top of a chair, which I think I'm going to use this quartered teak material here. So I'm going to go ahead and set this to multiply as well. Now you will notice right off the bat that things have gotten a little funky over here, and that is only because we are layering two things on top of each other. As soon as I pull that out, everything goes back to normal. Again, though, I'm going to want to scale this down because these are 1024 resolution images. That didn't do what I wanted. Oh, I hit the wrong button. I wanted to scale it. So this kind of has, the classic wooden chair texture kind of look to it, right? So I think I'll go about there. I'm going to go ahead and scale it. Then I can come in and tweak things around a little bit till I find, just that right sweet spot, which I think's right there. And then if you want, I'm going to go ahead and just merge these two together. Okay, that was a mistake. I think I need to actually put them both to normal before I merge them. Because otherwise some funky stuff happens. Alright, so they're both set to normal. I've got a little bit showing through here, which isn't really an issue, because that's a spot that you can't see. I messed that up. We're not going to worry about it because, like I said, you can't see it. I'm just going to go ahead and merge these. All right, and then we will set this back to multiply. There we go. And now, if we wanted to come in and paint in some further additions, like, a big green scratch on the top of the chair, we could do that. I don't know why we would want a green scratch on it. I'm just coming up with bogus things here. Maybe we want to, this is a chair, but, they usually have little felt pads on the bottoms of the legs so that you don't scratch up your hardwood floors with your hardwood stools. So let's go ahead and put the little felt pads on here real quick, just so that we don't scratch up any of our floors. And what I like to do, and I know a lot of people are gonna say that this is cheating and that you shouldn't do this and all kinds of things, and if you don't want to do it, don't. But I like to do it because I'm lazy. Just come in and do some HSV noise. It just puts a little variation in there instead of me manually trying to, put some artificial texture onto it. I just let the computer do that for me. Computers are supposed to work for us. We're not supposed to work for them. I mean, it sounds good at least. I really kind of don't like this green scratch I put on, but I can't really do anything about it at this point. You can obviously make full use of your layer stacks. You do have to, at a certain point, be careful though, because you are multiplying things, and at least to my knowledge, there's not a way to tell GIMP I want this layer multiplying to a specific other layer. So when you start stacking stuff, as we've seen when I imported this image, it was multiplying onto this image. So you have to kind of watch yourself, and you may have to combine some things before you do it, or you can put upper layers on that aren't multiplied. So I can go ahead and create a new layer here. I'm just going to create a transparent layer, and that'll just be set to normal. And then I will come over and I'm going to add some red stuff in. Get a pencil here. So as you can see, I can write onto anything here because this is just a normal layer. If I change that to multiply, everything that's written on the black goes away because it's being multiplied by essentially 0, so it becomes nothing. And everything on the chair here, you can see, is also multiplied onto the chair below it, which is because of this. If I turn that off, it is still being multiplied onto the wood texture. But you do both, and now it's multiplied by both. So I can't really make this just multiply by the stool texture. So yeah, you kind of have to watch yourself, and you can usually make things work. So anyway, that's all that taken care of. We'll go ahead and export this. All right, back in Blender, we will go ahead and load that image in. Image open. And you can't see where I'm browsing to, but it's the same place we saved the other one to. And you'll see we now have it loaded in, and we just have to change our texture here to use our new texture. And you can see we now have our wood texture with the green scratch in it. It has the little felt pads on the bottoms of the feet. It is shaded, so the underside top here is darker. You can really see a lot of that better just right here, but it's all shaded. It looks, a little more professional because it has that element of shading to it, which Minetest won't give you. And you could paint it in manually by hand, but again, why do the work when you can make the computer work for you? As I mentioned previously, you can bake more than just the ambient occlusion in Blender here. Now, to be fair, about 95% of the bakes that I do are just ambient occlusion, but every once in a while, you're going to have something that you don't want to do all the work yourself. Again, make the computer work for you. You shouldn't have to do anything. Tell the computer what you want. Isn't that what ChatGPT and Stable Diffusion, DALL-E 3, and whatever all are for? So we can just tell our computers what we want done and it'll do it for us. By the way, Stable Diffusion, I don't know what I'm even looking for here because I'm talking too much. Why does this look funky? What am I doing? Oh, there we go. Tangent. Stable Diffusion. Amazing. I love it. Off tangent. Okay, so say we want to do something different. I have done this in the past. Say we want to... I haven't done this specifically, but... say we want this texture on our stool in Minetest. How do we get this to there? Well, this is going to be kind of node-based heavy stuff. If you don't know how to use the node system in Blender, there's a lot of great videos on that. And they pretty much all apply the same way. So don't worry if you don't understand the vast majority of what's going on here. Basically, we have a texture coordinate input, so we're just using our UV layout as our texture coordinates. We have a noise texture. Yeah, it basically looks like this. It's this kind of psychedelic looking thing. It can just be kind of clouds. You can do a lot of different things with textures here. We're not going to really delve into any of that because that doesn't matter. What matters is that we have a material output and we have a texture that shows up here. And then we do need an image texture to bake too. You'll notice this is not hooked up to anything. It's just sitting here loose. If I were to hook this up to the base color on this shader node, you'll see we have our texture there. But we want this texture. So we will select the image texture we want to bake to. And then just like before, we will come over here. We are going to use a diffuse instead of the ambient occlusion. So if I do an ambient occlusion, we'll get exactly what we expect. If we do a diffuse, we will get maybe not what we would expect, maybe what we would expect. It is, oh, the light still turned on. I don't want that showing yet. That's for the next example. Let me put this back and try that again. There we go. All right, so now we have this texture realized into an image texture that we could now import. I shouldn't really say import, but that we could now use in Minetest. I have done this. If you have ever visited my Epic server, the, what's it called? Rosethinium and Diamond Armor are actually made in this fashion. So I just loaded in the armor model from 3D Armor, and I created a kind of crystal-y texture, and you know, it looked nothing like this, but this was, you know, I had the whole node tree set up and everything, and then I just baked it. I was like, yeah, this looks good. I want that to be on the 3D Armor. And the beautiful thing about this is if I turned this off from UV and I just don't provide an input vector, I'm going to have to change my scale a little bit here because that's kind of crazy. We'll notice this is not a good texture to notice this with. I can change that quickly though by just adding in a color ramp. What's color ramp under even? Thought it was a converter. Color ramp, there we go. Okay, and we're going to change this to factor, and we will just do this real quick. This noise texture is really not a good one to be using. Let's use a wave. Wave will be very easy to demo this with. There we go. Wow, that looks really incredible. Let me throw a bit of distortion in there. You know what? I won't even bother. We'll just leave it at 0. This works. So we can see here that we have some prison bars painted onto this object, and they line up really well, right? But if I hook my UV layout to it, things don't really line up anymore, like at all. But I actually do want them lining up. So I'm going to turn my vector off. That's a little tight. I don't think it's going to render out too well, so I'm going to drop the scale down to 2. You know, I'll drop it down to 1. There we go. This could be a little tighter to make those colors closer, or we could have more fade in there. This isn't meant to be a video about the node editor. If you want to learn about that, like I said previously, tons of great videos. We want this texture right here in Minetest. How do we do that? Well, same way as before. Click on the image we want to bake to, and we click bake. And bada bing, bada boom, I can drop this in here. And obviously it's a little different because this is at a 16 pixel resolution, 32 rather, sorry, excuse me, versus this, which is theoretically an infinite resolution, or close to. But you'll see it's the same thing. It just pixelated. But here's where it gets really neat. So they still line up perfectly. Looking at this, I don't even know what's going on. Like if I had to try to manually paint this to look like this, whoo-wee, I would be in trouble. I don't think I could make that happen. If we come and put this to rings, Yeah, this will be even better of a demo. We'll just do another quick bake on it. Look at that. There's no way. You would literally spend weeks. Well, I would at least. Maybe you're a genius and you could do this in like 2 minutes. I don't know. That would be very hard to replicate by hand. Make the computer do the work for you. That's all I gotta say, man. Make the computer do it for you. Now, maybe you don't want this, though. Maybe, just maybe, I'm just gonna revert this back to our original texture. You painted a texture. It looks good. It looks great. You know, but there's one little thing that you don't want to deal with doing yourself. So we're just going to pretend, because I don't feel like modeling it, that this is not a stool, but in fact it's a lamp stand. And the lamp exists. We can't see the lamp, but there is a lamp here. In fact, here is the lamp. It's a light bulb. There's no visual representation of it, but it's there. Okay, just because I didn't put one together. I'm going to put this up like really high so we can totally notice it. We have our stool texture here, and all we want to do is light up the top of it with this light bulb. So we're going to come back to do a bake here. We can still leave it just at the diffuse because the light is lighting up the diffuse. We'll go ahead and bake. It's a green light. Look at that. It makes the top of the bar stool very green because it's a green light. That is really bright, so let me turn that down to something a little more reasonable, like 10. And we'll just bake that again. That's better. It has a slight green tint to it. You can see it pretty good here. I've done this on a few things that I've done where I didn't want to fiddle around and try to get my own shading done right for a lamp. So you just add in a lamp, or depending on what it is, a mesh that's set to emit, and it'll do what you need it to do. Now, as we see here when we open this, we do have all kinds of options that we can bake as. A lot of these you can't really do anything with in Minetest. Like, you can bake normals, which is neat. It doesn't do anything because I didn't set any of this stuff up. And also, I think the normal baking, you need a different mesh, 2 meshes and stuff, but Minetest doesn't support normals right now. You can do shadow, which I'm surprised that didn't do anything. I would have thought there would be something with a shadow. Of course, the ambient occlusion, which, as you'll notice, doesn't care about the green light up here at all. That you'll pretty much just get in the diffuse. The one I wanted was glossy. So if we set glossy, and we have some gloss on this, it's actually called specularity here. If I turn that up all the way and bake it, also we have a lot of green going on here. It's kind of how shiny the material, or how reflective it is, I suppose. So we'd want to come over into our world and make the world black, most likely, so that we're not getting all the reflection of the world as well. It's going to really depend on what specifically you're trying to do. But yeah, this would be more or less a mirror reflecting this green light. If we had another mesh, I'll just throw something in really quick here. That's kind of a lot bigger than what I want, but it should work, I think. Let's see what happens. You know, I don't actually notice anything at all. Let's try once more. Yeah, I don't notice anything changing from that. I don't know if this needs to have a material as well. Sure, let's use that. Let's see what happens. Okay, it's not making any difference for whatever reason. I don't know. You can play around with all these. Emission, it doesn't emit anything, so there's nothing there for it to see. I personally would say 95% of the time, you're probably either just going to be doing ambient occlusion, or you're going to be doing a diffuse. The rest of these, for Minetest, don't really make any sense. Like this position thing, I don't even know what that... What is that? What is that supposed to be? It's a bunch of grids of different color. How would you use this for anything? I mean, to be fair, it does show you what's what. So you could look at this and say, okay, this leg here is obviously this, and this are the tops of the chair. But the ambient occlusion kind of does that halfway for you. And when you get good, you can do this. I can't really demo it very well, but I can come out of edit mode there and delete this thing. Here's our stool. I really hate that it has so much specularity, so I'm gonna turn that down. Oh yeah, that much nicer this way. You can have your image editor open. If you have 2 monitors, this is great. If you have 3 monitors, it doesn't get any better actually, because you only need 2 monitors to do it. I only mention that because I have 3 monitors. But regardless of how many monitors you have, you can make your image, your ambient occlusion, you can be painting it, whatever. Export it, have it loaded up here in Blender. Alt-R on the keyboard shortcut will reload your image. So you can be in GIMP, make some edits. Let me actually go ahead and just demo this real quick. So here I am in GIMP. Let me make some quick edits. So you know what? This green scratch, it was actually supposed to be a red scratch. I just got word from the client. He actually wanted a red scratch, not a green scratch. Oops, no big deal. So I just do my quick edit, Control E to export. Jump back over into Blender. It's still green. Alt R, it is red. I can instantly see my changes and realize, oh wait, that first one was actually, the first on this 2 here, this was actually supposed to be black. My bad. No worries, I can change that. Export real quick, jump back in Blender. You can actually do this with just a single screen too, just alt-tabbing between the 2 windows. And I mean, it's not real time, but it's pretty close. And if you really wanted to get crazy and do real time, you can actually do all the texture work right here within Blender. I'll just change this down to a 1 pixel radius. Say, yep, so the client decided that he actually wants this a little different. So he wants it blue, turns out. Who knew? Who knew that he... Wait, I thought I picked blue. Why did that go red? Interesting. He actually wanted it blue. Well, let me try to fix that here. Does this have like some... Should I be at a 2 pixel radius? I honestly don't know. I've done this once or twice. Oh yeah, I think this isn't actually pixels on the texture. It's something different. There we go. It kind of works. I mean, it does work. See? It's just not doing it as hard as I would like it to do. I'm sure there's ways that you can... Oh yeah, like right here. Fall off and stroke. You got so many options. Blender literally will do it all for you. You could do everything in Blender. Now, if I was going to do it, I would do it in here. Change my radius to 1 pixel. And I could just... Boopity boopity boop. This does not look like 1 pixel to me. I might have to come in and turn off anti-aliasing. Yeah, see, that's more what I expect. It does seem a little slow for some reason. I don't know why. Yeah, well, I was trying to pick green. Yeah, we actually wanted a green line here. And I wasn't quite perfectly in line there. You could do it. If you really wanted to, you could do it. I wouldn't. But you could do it. You've got all the options. Wait, I can turn off the cursor? What does that even do? Oh, it just turns off the little circly thing. Texture mask, I don't know what that does. Tiling. So many options. The fall off, I feel like you'd want flat, so there is no fall off, right? Okay. Never mind, that made it worse. Somehow. Stroke, I want 0% spacing? Okay, I think the fall off should have been set to not this. Smooth? But it's supposed to be a 1 pixel radius. Why isn't this working? It worked when I had the cursor turned on. I must be trying to paint on the corner of 2 pieces. I don't know. Point is, if you really wanted, you could do it all in Blender, and it would then be real time, and you can do it in the 3D viewport to paint stuff, and then you could make your seams match up because you're painting it as you see it. The options are limitless. The only limiting thing is you. Wow, that sounds really negative. That's going to wrap this one up. Hopefully you learned something. If you got any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments down below, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. We'll be doing something different in the next video. I don't know what. I feel like we've pretty much exhausted the whole texturing aspect of things. So we should probably get into some more advanced modeling techniques and maybe get into some rigging and animating stuff for mobs, etc. Ooh, that does remind me of one thing. The whole ambient occlusion bake really only works well on stationary objects, like this bar stool. Here's why. As demoed before, if we pull the top of the bar stool off, there's a lot of shading going on down here. Now imagine that this was some kind of a mob and it moves around, right? And it has legs, and these are its legs, right? Well, as its legs are moving, and this is actually even a better way to demo it, as its legs are moving and they rotate, this is a very weird rotation for the leg. Let me, this thing, here we go. As the leg rotates, well, now we have this weird shadow where a shadow shouldn't be because it's not colliding with anything anymore. So it only has limited use in mobile things because when they move, now your shadows are in all different spots. So you can still use it, but you gotta be mindful of where shadows exist on the mesh when you're baking it versus where they will or won't be when it's animated. And sometimes you can just go into the ambient occlusion bake. Oh wait, do I not have that anymore? It says it's this, but it's not this. You could go in there. I can just rebake it real quick too, so we can see it. You can go into the ambient occlusion bake and be like, well, this black spot shouldn't really be black because when it moves, it won't be. And you can just paint this. So we could select the color, right? We could select the gray color here and we could just paint the shadow out. And we would essentially come through everywhere on the ambient occlusion bake and say, yep, these shadows shouldn't actually exist. Let me get rid of those. And then in your texture, so if we go ahead and grab this leg and hope that that's one that I painted it off of. Well, I kind of painted it off of this one. We can see, yep, there's not a shadow where there shouldn't be a shadow because we manually removed it. So it's just a little thing to keep in mind if you're doing something that'll be animated. You may have to do a little extra work to make it look the way you want it to look, but depending on what you're doing, it may be worth it. It may be more worthwhile to just manually add the shading in to the texture yourself. It really all depends on what you're making and where it'll be viewed from, and there's actually a lot of things that factor it in. There's really not a one-size-fits-all solution. It's case-by-case basis, and you kind of have to figure it out for yourself. I don't have all the answers for you. Sorry. Okay, now I think we're going to wrap things up. So thanks for watching. Check back soon for another video, and I will see you then.